Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the newest episode of the HaskinCast Podcast, or if you're listening to this in the future, one of the older episodes of the HaskinCast Podcast. I'm your host, sounding a little scratchy for some reason, Scott Haskin. Don't know why. I'm not sick. I haven't really spoken much today. That's probably part of it, so my voice isn't warm. That'd probably do it. So welcome to another episode. I'm excited to bring you my buddy Tommy Schaeffer. Tommy owns a house that we shot a movie at a few years ago that I really enjoyed working on. It never got released. I scored the movie, I think, 3 different times for different purposes, and it never came out. But that's how it goes sometimes when you work in independent film. What sucks, though, is that, a lot of people put their hard work and labor into every project that goes on. And it really sucks when it never gets finished because all that hard work, no one gets to see the fruit of all the labor. And honestly, it's really unfair to those people, especially if they're not getting paid. But even if they are getting paid, it's just not right to treat people that way. What amazes me is how many times I've seen that happen, especially with directors that'll have multiple pictures that they bring people on, spend all this money on costumes and set design and all this stuff, and everybody does all this work, and then the film never comes out, and then the next film they do doesn't come out, and then the next one they do doesn't come out. Why keep going back to these people? It's kind of pointless to me. So I have a little less empathy if you are walking in knowing that person or that group has a track record of not finishing things, but also what's the point from their perspective? Really, if you're in the business and you want to continue to work with good people, you have to treat them well. And part of that is giving them fruit for the labor. So do the best you can to finish your film, even if it takes a while, even if you just have to give them a rough cut. If you can't finish it, you run out of money, whatever the situation is. But get that to them. I worked on another film. Unfortunately, now 4 people that were in the film have now passed away, and they never got to see any of the footage that we worked very hard on. I wrote well over an hour of music for that film, and now it'll never be seen by anyone. And it really sucks. So if you're going to start a project, make sure you have a plan to finish it one way or the other. At the very least, put a rough cut together for everybody that was involved. They deserve it. So I don't know why I got off on that soapbox, but whatever. That's my soapbox for today or this week. And let's talk about some good stuff. So as we're winding down the year towards the holidays, of course, I don't know when it starts for everybody, but a lot of people start to get really nostalgic. I'm no different. The weather typically does that to me, as does the kind of music that the weather makes me want to listen to. So today I was listening to a little bit of King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King, listen to some Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I don't really listen to music a lot, but I have some times where I'm freed up. The audio side of my life is freed up a little bit, and I can enjoy some work that some other people did. And it's really nice to be able to do that. But yeah, this time of year is definitely King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, early Deep Purple albums. The first 3, I think I came to connection with them for some reason. I want to say in the wintertime. I'm not exactly sure, but they're when I listened to them or when I got into them, I think the most. So that's why they sort of reflect that time of the year for me. Lots of good stuff. 3 Dog Night, I'm sure will be on my list here at some point soon. Some Chick Corea, no doubt, although that's a little bit more summer for me. The Electric Band with the albums Beneath the Mask and Inside Out, which are 2 absolutely fantastic albums. If you're a fan of intense music, great musicianship, and just some incredible breakneck paced music, really check that out. Chick Corea and the Electric Band. You had John Patitucci on bass, Dave Weckl on drums, Frank Gambale. Just a great group of people doing some absolutely amazing stuff. I had the pleasure of meeting Dave a few years ago. We had just opened the Pro Sound store in Littleton, Colorado, and he came out for the grand opening. And I got to ask him, I said, I heard that the album Inside Out was written and recorded in 2 weeks. And he just smiled and shook his head. He goes, "No, that's not true. It was actually less." And if you've ever seen the sheet music, or you ever just listen to any of the songs, you can go to YouTube right now and hear some of the tracks. Ignore the video because they they didn't film the recording, so everything's kind of like that sort of stop frame stuff that's really weird to watch. But listen to the music, and it's very, very intense. But a lot of it is just soloing and improvs, because they're the kind of guys that could do that with that kind of backup in the band, and just incredible stuff. But Dave was great. It was a real surprise, because I, even as the operations manager of the store, had no idea that he was coming. It was very last minute. He had a gig in Boulder the next night, so he agreed to fly out a night early and come to the store and do an autograph signing. I got to spend a little time with him. Absolutely great guy, very talented drummer, somebody who's definitely had an influence on me as a drummer. But yeah, so this is the time. And then, of course, you got the holiday scented candles. You got all the holiday treats and eats coming up. We've already started with Halloween. We'll be heading into Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And it's that time when everybody starts thinking about all the pounds that they're going to put on. But some of my friends have actually done something really interesting this year. They've actually made a plan to have their cheat days on holidays, and they've kind of scoped out what they're going to eat and what they're not, so that they can stay on their diet or workout regimen and not be too affected by the holidays. So I hope that they're all able to stick with that. I think that's a pretty good idea. For me, I just eat, when I want to. Once I move, then I'll have the space and capacity to start working out again, which I really miss. As I've gained some pounds back, I certainly miss feeling a little bit healthier than I have as of late. But that's all for the fairly near future and good times ahead. But speaking of Thanksgiving, of course, you can't have Thanksgiving without Black Friday, which has already started, even though it's only today is the 5th of November when I'm recording this intro. And I've already seen that Black holiday sales are going to be extended, and they haven't even started yet. This is just absolutely ridiculous how crazy this gets every year. I really feel for the people that work in retail and are high pressured or forced to leave their families on Thanksgiving, regardless of my thoughts of Thanksgiving, which I have not been shy about saying this is just a stupid holiday. Not because the idea of having gratitude is stupid. I'm a huge fan of that. But the premise under which we celebrate Thanksgiving is absolutely just ridiculous. If you know the history of the Indians and all that. So, but looking at the positive things about it, I love that people get together. I love that it's just a day to enjoy each other's companies and appreciate the hard work that people put into the food and the relationships and everything. It's just a good day for people to be together. And I like that part of it. The part I'm not liking is how the Black Friday bullshit is starting earlier and earlier, and people get pulled away from their families because they work in a retail outlet. And somebody thinks, well, if I open 15 minutes earlier, then I'll get all the traffic. Or if I open 20 minutes earlier than that guy, I'll get all the traffic. And, for what? So many people are going to buy online. There's great deals online, free shipping with most places, especially, companies like Amazon. Are going to have free shipping. Typically, I think Guitar Center Musician's Friend does that as well. I can't recall for sure. Some of the other ones like Z-Sounds does. They probably do. I think they all do. I would imagine so anyway, because if one does it, they all have to do it. Although shipping times may be a little slow just because of the bulk orders. But really, if you don't have to go out, don't go out. There's no reason to fight the traffic, to stand in line in the cold, to potentially get injured, because that's how stupid this whole thing gets. If you're kicking someone in the head for a $20 off of a TV, there's something much bigger going on in your life. And I think the reason that I feel so strongly about this, just aside from the general stupidity of it, is that when I was fairly young, I remember my dad was working at Kmart, and I remember there was an employee family night where you were allowed to invite X amount of people from your family to come in and shop for Christmas. The store was closed early, and so it was just us in the store, and they were doing like really cool specials. My dad has a really good voice, so he was always announcing the blue light specials and things like that. And I don't know what year it was. I'm sure if I did a little research, I could figure it out. But I know I was fairly young. And this was the year that the Cabbage Patch Dolls came out. And it was a pretty big deal. And I think it was like one pallet or something that the store got in. And, everybody, of course, was a lot of people were there just to get the dolls. But while you're there, you might as well do all the other shopping, too, and see what kind of deals you can get. And this was, I don't recall Black Friday even being a thing, although I'm sure it was, but not to the extent that it is today. At the very least, I'm sure it started on Friday and not midway through Thursday. But anyway, when he announced that the Cabbage Patch dolls were going to be in whatever location, and oh my God, the mad rush I saw people pushing people, people getting knocked to the ground, punched in the face. I saw one person get kicked in the head, and all for a stupid fucking doll. It just, from that point on, I realized the ridiculousness of retail. And even though, of course, I purchase things through retail. I mean, you don't live in this world and not buy things through some sort of retail outlet, at least in most countries. But to go through those means, and I mean, really, is it so important I think they had 100 dolls on that pallet or whatever. And, I don't know how many hundreds of people were in the store, but certainly not everybody's going to get one. And to just be like that. But here's the real kicker when you put it into perspective is these are the family members of the people that work in the store. So I have to ask him if he remembers, but how do you go into work the next day knowing that your cousin kicked your coworker's mother in the head over a doll? How do you even come back from a night like that? I don't recall them doing it again. Now they may have, and I just may not have gone. Certainly, I think there would have been a little bit of hesitation with the physical dangers that ensued that night. But how do you just go into work and look at your coworker and know what your family members did to each other? And I can't even imagine. And if it were me, I probably wouldn't have done it again. It's just crazy. So be safe, be kind, be courteous to each other, treat each other well, and know that whatever electronic or deal that you're going to get, there's Cyber Monday, there's all kinds of holidays and other deals and all kinds of things that are going to be going on from now through Christmas. And then you've got the New Year's sales and then the after, New Year's and everything else. So then there's the tax return sales. It never ends. So yes, there are some people that are going to get some absolutely incredible deals. Are you going to be one of them? What are the chances? Probably not worth the hospital bill or the lawsuit or whatever you're going to have to pay out for injuring somebody to get your stupid TV. So just be good, be careful, be considerate of others. Money comes and goes, but somebody's eye only goes once. So anyway, back to Tommy. Oh, no, I did want to talk about the reason I went into the Black Friday thing was because I do know some amazing specials that are going to be coming out in the music industry. Obviously, places like Guitar Center and whatever are going to be having a lot of great deals. But Best Service, my friend Wolfgang over at Best Service, I talked to him yesterday in Germany. They're going to be doing some amazing Black Friday deals. You're not going to want to miss out on this. If you're a composer or sound designer, check them out. You can go to bestservice.com. I think there's a Best Service DE if you're if you speak German. I can't remember them all, but you can Google it. Best Service is one word, and you could do like Best Service. And if you don't find it, do Best Service space VST is a great place to find it. I'll have the link in the show notes as well. But sometimes when you're on your phone, the links aren't clickable. So keep that in mind. But yeah, Best Service is going to be doing some absolutely amazing stuff. And I've got some other friends that I'm waiting to hear what their specials are going to be, but I'll be bringing those to you in the show opening and in the show notes as those details are revealed to me. I do have a lot of episodes that are going to be coming up between now and the end of the year, but I'm going to be taking a somewhat hiatus as I'm working on a very special project that I will reveal if I can at some point. But the show should be able to continue. I've got enough lined up, but I'll be doing some of the recordings way ahead of time, so they won't be going quite with the release dates, but they will be going on, and you can find out about the great things that people are doing out in the world. And I'm still waiting to hear back from some, but I've got some great guests lined up through the rest of the year, and then some lined up for next year as releases come out. So the show continues. We're edging towards 100 episodes. So that's pretty cool. I'm really excited about that. And so let's talk about Tommy, though. Tommy is a fantastic guy, one of the coolest people I know, generous guy. and great musician, great sound recordist, I think is what we decided the actual title of his job is. So when he's on a film, he's the guy out in the field that holds the boom mic, that has the sound pack strapped to his waist. He's got the headphones on and he's recording dialogue. He's recording nature sounds. He's recording room tone. He's the one that gets the angry looks while he needs a minute or two to get the room tone, and everybody wants to move around and talk because they're anxious and have a lot to do. But for the film's continuity, you need to get room tone every single location you're at. So you need quiet to be able to do that. And so while everybody impatiently waits for Tommy to get his sound, they will just have to wait for the betterment of the film. And if they don't want the film to be better, why are they there? So we talk a lot about that and then we started talking about his new venture, which I'm really excited about. And we'll get to that when I air part 2 in a couple of weeks. But for now, let's talk to Tommy Schaeffer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited to bring on my next guest. I know I say that every week, but it's because I always am. And I've known Tommy for a number of years now. We met shooting an independent film in Arizona. We shot a couple of days at his house. He was gracious enough to give it up to the destruction of a film crew. And I'm sure he's still trying to clean up from that. But we became really good friends after that and have spent many a late night chatting over coffee on different over different states and having long philosophical conversations that could have saved the world if we had actually shared them with anyone. So without further ado, I will bring on my buddy, Tommy Schaeffer. Tommy, how are you doing?
Hello. I was trying to choke back laughter to that entire introduction.
Was it accurate?
It was fabulous and accurate. Yes. Delightful. I as soon as you said still cleaning up after that production, I pictured not even a handful, but maybe 10 different things that as I walk, I could take you to the house and give you the tour and say, this is from this production. And those tacks and the molding, I still have not yet removed them because they're from another production that I had the pleasure of actually being a part of.
Wow.
And yeah, so
you shot several times at your house.
I have shot several films. But not I haven't, but there have been several films in the old casa of Tomas, and some of them I was in, and others I did sound on. But the very first one where we met, that's a fun one because I was still working full time as a computer programmer, way up in North Scottsdale, and was it 7 days, 8 days? It was a good bit of time that y'all shot there. And, I would get up in the morning, navigate the maze of production equipment and pieces of set that were actually in the house, do my routine as much as I could around that, and then get in the car and go to work and trust that my house would still be there when the film crew descended upon it and shot all day while I was at work.
That was the most fun part. I would stay there all day and I would go run errands, but I was there for a good chunk of the day. And all day long, I'm like, how is Tommy okay with this entire group of people he doesn't really know, except for a couple of them, taking over his entire property, like has access to everything. And you're just like gone for the whole day. That's really trusting.
Well, it is, as most of these things are, it's a little bit of trust and a lot of foolishness, I think. I think the production was clever like a fox or crazy like the fox. What is the phrase? But this was, I hadn't joined the film industry yet. I hadn't realized that was going to be the phase of my life yet. So I knew, I'm going to say it, nothing about what it's like to be on set, what happened to homes that were given to a production company. So I really just was blind to any of the possibilities, and sadly learned the hard way that things get broken, things get misplaced, things like I had a family heirloom, a silver vase that my mom would give me. This was not on the Nephilim shoot that you were on, but it was another short film soon after. A beautiful vase that I cherished because my mom passed away in 2000, and I have a few things that I kept of hers. and things that are special that she had given me and had my name on it. And it was a student crew, and they were setting up in the backyard something. But no one told them that the belongings of the owner are not yours to use for the production at will. Anyway, someone found this vase and thought it would be delightful in the production, but they didn't like its silver color and decided it needed to be painted matte brown.
What?
And they covered the whole thing in not latex paint, mind you, that could easily be scraped off with a tongue depressor or something.
Yeah.
You know, no, it was enamel, oil-based paint was on a silver, like one of those little deals that you put a wine bottle in to chill it. You know, it was. I never used it, but I
like a decanter.
Yeah, no, it was like a bucket, like an ice bucket, but smaller than an ice bucket, and it would just hold a bottle of wine and a little bit of, like, you know, like the towel.
Oh man, so here's what gets me. I mean, if they brought a vase or they brought a prop and said, hey, you know, we don't like this, we need to paint it, that's fine. But to just take some object that isn't yours and not clear it with anyone and just start manipulating it, I mean, how wrong is that? That's so rude.
Oh, it was so sad, and that's when I learned you have to be. Like, I thought I was being overbearing or rude by watching things, but no. You gotta watch every little step, especially at a student production and, you know, a professional deal where they actually pay for the location and they have contracts and stuff like that. It would have been a whole lot different, but this was, you know, the hard learning that we all do during our early days in the student film world.
And you can say, well, it's a student film, but the fact is, like, this isn't a 5-year-old child. This is somebody who's at least bordering on being an adult.
Thank you very much. That's very true. Like, you only get so much mileage out of, but it's a student film.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because on top of that, I'll tell you something even more fun. This podcast is going to turn into griping and moaning, right? And I should probably, here's what you're going to hear from me for the next hour. Like, don't, you're not going to put that part in, right?
Just on the things I saw today alone when I went outside, I could do a whole podcast on that. Yeah. But no, it is true. You have to be really careful. So I think the new rule should be only one person is allowed in the house at a time as long as you chaperone them.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
I will say, though, you weren't there for this, but one of the most interesting things that I experienced while I was on set is I was just about to leave to go pick up some supplies on the last day. And our actress had to do a birthing scene. And because they were getting ready to shoot, I couldn't leave because then there's noise and that gets on the tape and it can screw up a take. So I had to stand outside the front door of the house and wait. And I heard her give birth like 7 times, intense screaming. And I mean, you could just feel her hands clutching something like someone's neck. And it was just such an intense thing. But she did it over and over and over every time, like it was the first time. And I really, in that moment, being trapped there, I thought, I'm glad I was, because I really learned about people that are just willing to go for it and give their all every single take.
That is a wonderful realization. And you know what, you were trapped on the other side of the door. So it's that phenomenon of that your hearing being heightened. It's the only sense that you had to go by, right? Because you're not watching the scene and you couldn't see what was happening. So your energy is focused on just listening to that, and it's already a loud and intense. So yeah, that had to be a fascinating experience for you to stand on the porch and enjoy.
It was intense. I mean, it was so intense that after we were finished with the shoot, I went out and got a vasectomy.
Oh, is that true?
No, I didn't have the money, but it was, but I love the house. It's a really cool little house, and the backyard's really big. We had the whole craft services set up back there. We had the wardrobe in the little garage room that you've got. I mean, it was just such a great place because you kind of have your own workshop that doubled as the makeup room. And it was a great place to shoot. But the best part of it for me, because the movie never came out, as so many independent films don't actually ever even get finished, which I have a whole nother beef with. But the movie never got finished and never got released. But I met a lot of great people. I worked with some cool people, and I got to meet you. And there were definitely some amazing highlights. But it is frustrating. How many films have you worked on that never came out or even got finished?
Wow, I wish I had done my homework to actually answer that question with actual numbers. But having experienced it myself, I can give you rough numbers, and they're astronomical. I probably worked on, goodness, like if you include features and shorts, easily in the range of 250, 300, and I might, if you could go to, anyone listening right now could go to my IMDb page and see 12 to 15 right. that are actually listed,
Right.
And okay, I believe that's probably 20 to 30. But yeah, I mean, we're talking orders of magnitude less, so say 300 altogether, 30 have seen the light of day.
Yeah.
And that's, it's frustrating because there's a mentality, at least in the Arizona community, in some sections of the community. You can't speak generally.
Right. Yeah.
But there's a mentality of quantity over quality in a lot of people's minds. That's just bad practice in any industry.
Well, sure. And the thing is that, you go and say, yeah, I've worked on 300 films, and somebody goes and pulls up your IMDb and says, yeah, you've done like 10% of what you just promised me. Now I don't trust you because you're lying. Right.
And then now how do you, like, what, here, look at my resume. Well, that's a thing that you sat at your computer and typed out. How do you know that's true? So yeah, you're right. As a practitioner, that's a frustrating thing because we put 12-hour to 15-hour days in on these productions, and for them not to see the light of day is, you're learning and you're growing and the craft is developing, especially for the students. But after a while, that's an old song to continue to listen to because you want to you need something transferable to that next. Because you're always in a job interview in this freelance world, right? You're always proving to the next person why you're the person to hire. And if the films aren't coming out, and it's real hard to sell yourself.
It is. And I think really the whole project is the interview, because you get the job, but while you're on the job, you're constantly being evaluated. In post-production, your work is going to be evaluated. I don't think that the interview ever really ends.
Oh, I never thought of it that way, but you're spot on. Yeah, every day you're only as good as your last take, almost, especially as a location engineer, location recording.
Let's talk about what you do. So you're a sound location. Now, you say engineer, but is it recordist? Is that the right word? You could go to many forums out there on the internet and find vast arrays of discussion on the topic. But yes, recordist, the location recording or location mixer. But actually, that's also the misnomer, because we often go by sound mixer. Right.
Production sound mixer is the most common term. But honestly, you're a production set it and forget it each take engineer.
Right.
In the one man show band that I am, with the with the E&G bag and the mixer on your person, and then that same person holding a boom in the scene, monitoring the lavaliers on the talent. When your take is up, it's very unlikely that you're mixing real time. You're setting for those highs and going in for the kill on each take, and then begging for a retake if there was a.
Well, sure. But I think that's why I've always hated the term sound mixer, because when I think mixing, I think sitting behind the desk and, playing with levels and really getting a good blend of things. But really what you have to do is you have to make sure that the sound is recordable, that it's clear, and everybody's mic is hot, and then they're just going to do the scene and you capture it. You're really more of a capturing engineer than a mixer.
Absolutely. Yep. That's it. So your location recordist is the proper term. We'll put it in the liner if there is a more proper term. I'm sure I'm always learning, of course.
Right.
But yeah, you're far from mixing. Now, when I'm on post-production projects, and as you know, in your world, you do a lot of it. That's the mixing that we know and love. And
yes. Or know and loathe, depending on the day or the take.
Yes, know and love, spelled L-O-H-E.
Well, and now for those of you who are trying to picture what I'm talking about or what we're talking about, because you're here too with me, Tommy, by the way, is if you've seen a film set or like if you've watched some of the last season of The Office, where you saw the guy with the boom arm and then the big mic with the fuzzy thing on the end of it. That's what Tommy does. He goes and records the sound on the set of a film. And there are a lot of challenges to that. I mean, if you're in an indoor environment and your characters are fairly close together and you're just booming the conversation, you're pretty much just standing there waiting for it to be done. But what happens when they move around? No, I'm asking you,
That's not
Tommy.
a rhetorical question, is it? That's not a rhetorical question.
No.
I'm listening to this awesome podcast mode, and I realized just at that moment.
Well,
that's not going to work if we continue to do that, right?
No, it's going to be a very short show, I think.
Right. You're going to miss the whole show. Yeah, you make a great point. And, oh man, you got to move with the actors. And it depends if I've done reality shows where we've got wireless radio mics on every person. So you get a little leeway in that boom mic. You don't have to get it on every single person when the action takes place, especially in a reality type situation where we don't have a rehearsal. We don't have a script where we get to read and I get to preemptively know who's going to be speaking next. Even when I do know that, it's really a challenge to remember, because you don't get to just watch the scene and follow the logic of the conversation and doing a million things in my head, listening for interference, listening for background noises, making sure that the levels are right, watching the levels, blah blah, all this stuff. So the words that are coming out of the actors' mouths it doesn't get processed by my brain like a normal conversation would. So it's hard to follow the flow. So you don't know who's going to be next because it's just blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
You're listening to the signal and not what the signal's actually saying.
Absolutely. It's levels and signal rather than the content of those actual words, which is a fascinating thing that I only learned over time. And sometimes, it just happened in this, it depends on where this edit lands in your podcast, but where I caught myself listening to your words and enjoying what you were saying, but not realizing it was a question directed to me that I should answer. And there I was, being a sound mixer, right in a very, how meta was that just happened.
Right. Yeah, and I'm leaving that in.
Okay, good. Fair enough.
Well, I'll tell you.
Well, now you have to because we addressed it.
Well, see, now you've locked me in a box. But I've boomed on 2 films, and one was 5 weeks of shooting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and that film never came out. And then I had one that I did that was just a one night and a couple of pickups the next night shoot because it was just a short film, and that also never came out. But when I was working on that short, it was a very emotional film that a friend of mine wrote. And the scene was a very long scene and they weren't moving around much. So I pretty much just stood there while they were doing the scene. And I didn't need to really do anything because there was no variations. But I was getting so caught up in the emotion of the scene because it's very upsetting. And I was trying not to tear up, and I was trying not to look at them and start hearing humming in my head and just trying to block everything out because I was like, just finish because I really don't want to hold this mic anymore. But I'm glad that you can disconnect from that because that really would have helped me that night.
Yeah. And full disclosure, I'm not, and I would be a miserable human if I could perfect that. So I'm not good at, or not a perfect at doing that because yeah, on the other coin, and you get me thinking here, next to the makeup department, I think sound engineers develop the closest relationships the fastest with actors in a short film or even a feature, especially a feature. And I say that because, number one, we're in intimate moments where we're technically setting the person up technically with the microphone equipment, especially if we're doing concealed labs and the like. So you're working with the costume and you're undoing things that they just spent 20 minutes putting on just so you can hide the wire. And maybe we're running a thin wire through their hair. And all the while, there's conversation and, you have to be cordial. And I always make really great friends right away in those moments because I think it's important to help that actor be comfortable. So there's that. But on top of that, you are listening to this person every time they speak intently, whereas other folks on set, especially folks whose job is in the beginning of the scene, say the grip and lighting team, their job is to come in, set it all up. But when we're shooting, they're out at the truck getting set up for the next, or getting gear ready for the next setup. And those folks don't get to watch the scene as much. But, the director, the cinematographer, and sound team, are like, we're listening to these people every single take. So just like if you watch a play a number of times, you start to think that those people more than you actually do. So after a take, you're probably more friendly with them because you feel like you've been having this conversation, but they've only been talking at you. They haven't been talking with you. So it has a propensity to be awkward because in the early stages, the person might be less warmed up to you than you are to them. I hope this is a delightful journey in my babbling for your use.
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
Stop.
Well, but you do bring up a great point. And this is what I knew was going to happen when I talked to you, is now there's like two threads of this that I want to follow. The first one is that you said, like you feel like the people when you've watched the play a few times. And I really think that that's why celebrities are so misunderstood, because people think that because they know a character or something that they've played, they know who that person is and don't separate necessarily the person from a character that they played, especially if it's on like a television series or a series of movies where they have a lot of visual of that person being that character. And then the other thing that you said was how close you get to these people. And what's interesting is you do the on-set sound, but you also are a composer. So, and some of the projects that you work on, you will go off on your own and compose the music, where you are now, instead of being close to these people, now you're as distant as you could be from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you feel that does it get lonely sometimes because you don't have that, the interaction with the people because you're so used to doing the on-set sound? Is the composing part hard?
It absolutely is. And you bring up a fantastic point. And, if we can segment the world into two categories, one of those favorite categories of segmentation is the introvert versus extrovert. And I do, identify with extroversion more than introversion. But as I've grown older, I've absolutely fallen more in love with my introverted side, which does lend itself to going off, shutting the door, shutting the blinds, putting on a pot of coffee and or tea, depending on the time of day, and like saying goodbye to the world for a while and closing off. But there, once I emerge from a post-production project and just go grocery shopping and have that conversation with the cashier for like 2 minutes and realize that she is done with this. She was done with this 10 minutes ago, but this is the first person I've talked to in a day or two. Right. And I realized that it's a very important thing to keep that balance.
Yeah.
And not wait until later.
Well, see, and that's why I don't talk to myself at home when I'm on a project and I'm not going to leave the house for a few days. And I really try not to talk to myself because I'm afraid that when I go outside, I won't shut that off. And I'll just be walking down the street or in the grocery store, just muttering to myself. It is interesting because there is some level of human connection that we need, But also it's kind of easy to just become that hermit that hides behind the curtain and just kind of peeks out, and somebody walks by and they just see one eyeball looking out of the curtain and they're like, what's with that guy? And, because you get to the point where you don't want to re-enter the world. Right.
Because in your studio, the social stakes are low, right? There's no, I don't have to censor myself. I don't have to watch what I say. I don't have to be affected by what someone else says. I don't, it's real safe and real easy, but it's also lonely as bleak, So, so, but man, I do love getting lost. And in full disclosure, I haven't done, and this is going to go on a third thread probably, but part of this trip that I'm on right now, of my major goal was to dive deep into some music production, but due to a technical problem that maybe we can solve during this discussion together, I didn't start on it at all. But all that aside, I really miss the days where I would just get lost and you find that sample, you find that timbral tone that in your closet full of patches that you just love and it's perfect for the thing, and you just go and hit record and perform like no one's watching. You just keep anyway. Now I'm going to get off in an organic emotional rant, but I love getting lost in that. Let's put a period on that. I love getting lost in those moments and just like once you emerge from 20 minutes of doing that and the fog lets you go. Is the tea burn? Did I leave a kettle on? What's burning? So many things get ignored when you're going on that path. So, I miss that.
Oh, yeah.
Can't wait to get back to that.
Oh, for sure. And it's, that's one of the best parts about doing the music for really anything. I mean, even if you're just writing your own project or what, is just that you're searching for something and then the magic just happens. You just find that right blend, or it could even be something as simple as you pan something differently and it brings out another instrument that you could figure out how to cut through in the mix. And it's those moments it's kind of like waking up from a dream that you were really happy to have, and you wake up and you're like, I just want to fall back asleep into that dream. And you can't.
It's brilliant. And hopefully you were recording when it happened, and then just go back and fine tune it. I love that you say that though, because you just turn a knob, you pan a certain way, or you get so that drops out some bunch of frequencies in some instrument or voice that was covering up something else, but the absence of that now lets the other one shine through, and there it is. It's cool. Turn it down. We're shut down for the day. We did it. That's a wrap. You feel real good about that, and I love that. And then there's the bad days.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you mean the ones where you have to go outside?
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's true though, but I've gotten to the point now, because I'm so used to when I'm doing the recording and the basic mix. Of course, the final mix you have to do to studio monitors, but when I'm doing my basic mix, I listen to everything under headphones, and I've gotten now to the point where I prefer to watch everything with headphones, like movies, television shows, whatever it is, because there's so many subtle things that if your speakers aren't loud enough, or if you're not close enough to them, that you miss. And now that I'm listening to everything with headphones, even movies I'm really familiar with, I'm hearing little nuances that they put in that I never even knew were there.
Right. Because depending on your speakers and the setup of your room and the treatment of your room, that can get lost. That could get either lost in the room or accentuated by the room incorrectly in a way that the original design of sound designer did not intend. So the headphones bring it all in.
Right. Because at least movie-wise, everything is pretty much designed for what your theater experience is going to be, not what your at-home watching experience is going to be. Although I know they do remix some things for the home audience, because if they're mixing to surround sound, and they know most people don't have surround at home, or at least not a high quality surround, they know that they'll lose a lot of the depth of the audio. So I know that they've done some remixes, but I kind of wish that they would just level out the volumes a little bit, because it seems like it's really quiet and then it's just loud. And I find that I'm riding my volume like I would as an engineer when I'm just trying to watch something.
Oh, really? Now, when you're watching a TV show and watching TV and commercials, or are you saying in a particular movie you're actually writing it?
Yeah, like even within a movie, like let's say that it's a space movie and they're having a conversation and then they switch to like an outside shot and you hear this ship goes zooming by, but it's like way louder than the dialogue was, unnecessarily louder. And I feel like on a lot of things, and it's probably because I'm an over picky audio engineer, but I feel like a lot of times I'm just riding the fader just to try and find a balance within the show so that my ears aren't blown away when the ship goes by and I can still enjoy the dialogue of the next conversation.
I love it. So you are actually remixing the mix as you enjoy it in your home. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah. Now, if like somebody like Waves or something would just make like a live theater plugin or something where you could just, have it automatically buffer the volume for you while you were just watching a movie, that'd be awesome. I would pay a lot of money for that.
I love that. Your story and potential app or product is very complicated. I would just be happy if we could get a simple gate or something that we could jam onto the output of our TV and or sound systems and make commercials that are cranked all the way up to 0 dB via FS, make them at least the same as the movie or bring the movie up to 0 so that or TV, so that those commercials don't blast you out of your chair after you're just seeing the most intimate, whispery love scene or something like that.
Oh my God, I know. That's so
drives me nuts.
And maybe one for YouTube as well.
Oh, for sure. And Pandora while we're at it. Let's just go across the board.
Right. Just one for life.
Because I love listening to like a real chill ambient music while I'm falling asleep with Pandora, and I don't want to spend the money on the subscription. And then this commercial, after a nice 45-minute lull, I'm falling in this car commercial cuts through the mix. It's just not pleasant.
Well, what's funny is there's so many people that put videos out on YouTube that are like 8 hours of relaxation music or 8 hours of waterfall and stuff like that. And like, yeah, that would be awesome if it wasn't for the commercials cutting in every 3.5 minutes or whatever the time is. Like, it just takes you right out of it.
Yes. Oh man, you just opened up thread number 4. The last cool slow TV YouTube video that I just watched is one of my favorite sailing channels. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of sailing channels out there with people who are doing the liveaboard and cruising around the world, and it's a lot of really fun adventures and about their trip. And here we are at this restaurant, and here we are fixing the water maker, and here we are. Just lots of neat adventures. But one of my more favorite channels is during the call of some other, not industries, but markets, whatever the word is, that does slow TV and just puts a waterfall, like you said, put the waterfall for an hour. Anyway, they have a bunch of GoPro set up and some, I don't know what they use for audio, but we could certainly fix it because that's where my story is leading. But they did 40 minutes of just sailing on one of their passages. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately for you and I, the video is a straight 0 to 40 minute mark video. So it's all real and uncut. But the audio track they chose to use loops and recycles at about 45 seconds.
What?
And it's miserable. I mean, it's just slow rolling waves that, I don't know, that passerby might not notice, but with, take iterations of that. And I'm like, wait, is that just a loop? Oh my! And I had to turn it off. I couldn't watch it. The most important part was loop. And so anyway, I want to reach out to them and say, there's a better way.
Yeah. It seems like it would be far more work to create that than it would be to just use the camera audio.
Yeah. Well, my guess is there's a lot of things banging around and hitting and a lot of unpleasant sounds. I mean, it's pleasant for the sailor, but unpleasant for I just want to hear waves crashing the person, whoever that is.
Right.
So I imagine they just decided to find a section. I'm sure it's longer than 45 seconds, but to me it felt like 45 lousy seconds.
Well, what's interesting, and I haven't gone back and actually examined this yet, and I really would like to. So I don't know how much stock I can put in this, but those videos on YouTube where they're showing the booms that go off in the sky that nobody knows what they are.
I don't
Have you
know
seen any of
this.
those? Oh, they're fascinating. Yeah, you can look up like Giant Boom or Booms in the Sky or Apocalypse, because everybody thinks it's, the apocalypse is coming and whatever. And there's all kinds of things. There's like these really weird brassy scraping sounds, and no one can tell where they're coming from. But anyway, I watched somebody try to debunk these videos, and I don't really know anything about them or about the history, but one thing that they said that captured my attention, and this is what I think you'll find interesting, is that most of those videos actually use the same recycled audio, and they just talk, like the individual will talk over the audio, but the original audio of the booms is just like repeated in a majority of those videos. And
really,
some of them up, and I'm like, wow, that's, if you're not faking it for your own purposes, that's pretty sad.
That's hilarious. That makes me think of like, oh, what was that screaming? And then somebody using the Wilhelm Scream over and over again, and all these different.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know why we're still using the Wilhelm Scream. It seems like, that's so overplayed. Whenever I hear it now, I just kind of roll my eyes.
Right, I think it's for humor alone now, right? It's so,
yeah.
We're so many other options.
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, every single Star Wars film has used a Wilhelm Scream.
That sounds very familiar. That's a very familiar sounding trivia bit right there that I believe I
would have to know if the last couple, because I really I couldn't get into them, so I don't know them as well as I know like the first 6 that came out. But I'm pretty sure every one of them has had a Wilhelm Scream. But I want to ask you a little bit more about the live sound, or the sound mixing, before we move forward, because when I did it on the feature film, I didn't know, like I'm a studio guy, so I'm a controlled environment type audio engineer and a recording engineer. But for you, you're outside, you're dealing with wind elements, you're dealing with rain, you're dealing with people moving around. Are there some pretty solid strategies for dealing with weather when you're shooting outside?
There are, and a lot of it. Oh, this is so fun. We're going to have 3 episodes. There are, and some things, a lot of things I learned along the way. I don't know at what point you want to throw this in there, but I'm not a trained engineer, as in I went to film school to learn audio engineering. I went through a personal evolution and ended up landing in and choosing to go after a freelance audio recording career because a lot of things lined up and it worked out, but I didn't go and learn it. So a lot of the real technical things, and even we were just talking about mixing with headphones, and I know I read a lot and heard and seen on a lot of forums that people just say, don't mix with headphones. So I just didn't, and I never did. And to hear that you do mix with headphones, it makes me rethink listening to those things without doing the research, or just mixing with headphones myself and deciding if that's what I want to do. So I thought of that while you're.
But that's why you came on the podcast, because you want to make this show rethink your entire life.
Yeah, you just got yourself a new tagline for the
podcast. Right. But no, what I do is I do the preliminary mixes through my headphones, and I know my headphones well enough to know sort of what the differences are between them and the speakers. Not a lot of the exact finite stuff. I still do my final mixes and my mastering with actual speakers, but I can get my mix really close using headphones, and then I really just need the speakers to fine tune.
That's exactly the counter point that I heard and read everyone say. Anyone who says, shut up, you guys, about not mixing with headphones. Use the headphones and know your headphones, know it inside and out, and then get that mix close, and then take the headphones off and do the best with because honestly, you can have just as much of margin of error in a room that's not treated properly, with speakers that are not placed well enough in the room, that it's better to mix with the headphones. Get that sound just in your earballs or eyeballs.
Right.
Yeah. Eyeballs for your ear. I love that.
It's a lot easier for me because I'm in a smaller room. So I find it's easier for me to set all my panning where I want the sounds to be and really be able to hear it in the headphones, so that when I turn the speakers on, everything is where it should be in the sound field. I just feel like I have a better perception of it that way. And then I can just fine tune, move a little bit over here, a little bit over there, or whatever with the speakers. And everybody works their own way. For guys that are in like a big treated studio room, it's probably easier for them to mix to the speakers because they're already, their whole room is designed for it. Whereas, for me, it's the master bedroom is my studio, and it's not always the most optimal conditions to mix. So to do the majority of it in the headphones, I find it's more accurate for me than it is to do it on speakers.
I love that. And guess what? You're ahead of your time, because look at how what's the word? How this content is consumed nowadays. It's on the phone, and if it's not through that teeny little tiny dime-sized speaker that has zero low end, barely any mid-size, and all highs, it's through the headphones. So if you're mixing in that environment, it has got to be good. And maybe I've misstated a lot of purist things, but yeah, I mean, why not mix in the environment that 90% of your content consumption is going to occur?
Right. And it's really weird to think of how much money I've spent on headphones over the years to work on really quality mixes and deliver the best that I can deliver at my level as an engineer. And then think about the fact that people are probably going to stream what I wrote over Spotify, listening through earbuds. And sometimes those earbuds aren't even wired anymore. So now you've got a potential little bit of loss of quality as it transmits the signal to the unattached earbuds. And I think, do I really need to work as hard as I do? I still think I do, because there are people that are going to listen to it on quality stuff. But if 90% of your listeners are listening on earbuds, it almost makes me feel sometimes like, why am I working so hard? I think I do it for me. I think it's just because it's who I am.
Yeah, you got to do it for you, and know that what you've produced is that higher quality, and then let the user degrade it. Because my goodness, an earbud is good compared to what most will do. And I can't tell you how many times someone was listening to music on their phone and just chilling out in a room. I was like, could you please get that on a subwoofer or something to fill in the gaps? I can't listen to music playing on a cell phone. It drives me nuts because I know there's so much data that we're not getting, and we're just interesting, different breed of people.
Well, yeah, that's true. But if you're actually listening through the phone speaker, you're really not getting the stereo effect.
Oh, right. You're losing the stereo. You're losing all the bottom end, and just miserable.
Yeah.
And people do it all the time.
Well, they're not allowed to anymore. So
right. Stop this madness, you crazy humans.
Exactly.
Now you were asking me something about location sound and
yeah. So how do you let's say something like wind. So you're outside, you're shooting a restaurant scene that's on the patio of a restaurant, but it's a little bit windy. Obviously you're going to see the fact that it's windy as the viewer, because you're going to see people's hair moving. You're going to see maybe light strings bouncing back and forth. So you understand that it's windy, but the audio can't have wind in the foreground. So how do you what's a good strategy for making sure that you're capturing good sound while not getting so much of that wind?
I love that question for so many reasons. I love talking to you, Scott Haskin. This is great.
Back at you, man. That's why I've been trying to find a time to get you on the show for a year?
Oh, sadly, admittedly, it is probably more than a year. But hey, the suspense is built greatly, and it is worth every iota of time waiting. But yeah, so on that, I love that for several reasons. The fascinating thing about wind is that wind itself makes no sound, right? It's the pressure difference, and the only sound you hear is its effects on the stuff around you. So with that being said, what we want to hear on screen, can hear or get away with hearing on screen, are its effects on the stuff that we see on the screen. So hair blowing, for instance, makes a sound. It's very subtle. You probably wouldn't even hear it over a conversation. But a leaf blowing by makes a sound. If a napkin flapping on the table makes a sound. All those things we want to accept and embrace and enjoy. If you have a director that's trying to get you to stop that sound, then get off that set. They're missing the beautiful things that build sound in the scene. Now, if it's overpowering and it's killing your dialogue and it's going to make your edit miserable, obviously this is why we record things in controlled environments. So there's that. I believe that diegetic sound, you have to go back to the film terms. The sound you see on screen is called a diegetic sound. Update in the liner notes if that's wrong. but the sound we don't want, and is the hardest or the most prevalent, and that's the wind on the capsule of the microphone. And that's that rumble that you hear. That's the low end booming bass that you'll hear on a microphone that's not treated. And honestly, as much as we hear that miserable sound in amateur video all over YouTube and even in indie short films and whatnot, it's very easy to avoid, and it just costs money. So you have to have the proper wind put around the microphones to break up that wind. And I visualize this for the listeners. Are you ever driving down the highway in rain, and you see the big rigs, the big tractor trailers with it looks like a hula skirt, a grass skirt on the back of the trailer?
Sure.
Have you seen that? Well, the fuzzies and the blimps that go around microphones are doing the exact same thing to the air that those hula skirts are doing to the spray of water. Basically, the large spray coming off of those tires hits those little fronds of the grass skirt, and it has to fight to get through each of those strands. And very few droplets of that water get through without getting broken up each time it impacts one of those little threads. Same for the fuzzy on your microphone. The wind is still getting to the capsule of the microphone. It's just getting there in tinier puffs of pressure that aren't measured by the capsule.
Wow, that's a great description.
Thank you. Yeah. It could very well not be what's happening at all, but that's how I think of it.
But either way, you've learned something that is either accurate or completely misleading.
So everything is still on the table. But no, that is
right. Yeah. Well, and I noticed a big, because I've done a lot of live sound for concerts and plays and things like that, but not a lot of recording like for film, which has a lot less leeway. There's a lot less you can get away with when you're recording for media. But the windscreens for like a shotgun mic are so different. They really look more like something that you could use as like a Swiffer and get all the dust out of a corner with than they do something for a microphone.
Yes. And that's what I call what I need a good word for it, but that's not second string, but the opposite of like when you bring in the stronger forces. When you see a fuzzy on there, there's another layer beneath that. There's possibly two layers beneath that. But in the kit that I have, particularly from my exterior shotgun mic, it looks like a pill. It looks like a capsule of sorts, and it's a plastic mesh with large holes, and I'm making holes signs with my hand here that you can't see in the podcast. But so imagine like a 1/4 inch square or smaller, maybe 1/8 inch square plastic mesh, and then inside that, wrapped and set inside that plastic mesh, is another finer screen, like a screen that you would have on your window, with like really teeny holes that only a pencil point would fit through. Then that blimp goes over the mic, and you could shoot and record sound with just that if the wind is, I'm going to say, between 5 knots and 15 knots of wind, maybe 20. But once you get over about 20, then you put that fuzzy on top, and then that breaks up the wind in a macroscopic way, and then those little puffs still have to get broken up by the screen. And then you might even have a foam case around the mic at the most innermost layer of the mic. And then even on top of that, there's a little tiny screen on the mic that does very little, if anything, but yeah. So, have we ever talked this much about wind protection? I don't know. I love that.
Well, but it is a fascinating thing, because that's, from my experience, as little as it is, that's really the biggest challenge for a sound recordist, is just combating wind. Maybe if you were an underwater recordist, which we'll get to, because I'm still hoping for that. But that I would imagine would have its own set of challenges, because every underwater recording that I've ever heard done sounds a little bit flangy, and it just sounds like
absolutely. Yeah.
Bubbles are just like scraping across the side of the mic here and there. It's a really bizarre sound what I've heard captured undersea.
Yeah, I like that you bring that up because it causes you to step back and remember that the sound we hear is simply variations in pressure that are hitting our eardrums. So the same is happening underwater. It's being carried in the complete medium, and throughout that, through the conduction of those pressure pulses on the way to your ear, different things. It's being absorbed by the water, or dissipated by the water, or whatever is happening under there. But it travels certainly differently. If we could talk, for instance, if we could press our lips into an I-beam, a steel I-beam, you would find that it has a completely different sound on top of all those things.
Oh, yeah.
If we could capture that.
Well, I mean, if you, like right now I'm speaking into the air and there's a microphone that's going to absorb some of that, but underwater it's just 100% resistance. So sound is not going to travel very far. I would imagine that most of what you're hearing is actually hitting the capsule that the microphone is in, the protective, waterproof capsule, more so than what the mic is actually picking up.
Oh, right. And that's you just described a GoPro perfectly, because the sound of a GoPro is so horrible, but only because it has to be, because the plastic case that surrounds the camera. You're right. All of that, it's the knocking of those waves onto that plastic, that 1/4-inch thick plastic, and then the vibration of that plastic is what's exciting the mic diaphragm, and that's why it sounds miserable, but unique and completely identifiable from, you could pick that out of 100 miles away. Oh, that's the sound of a GoPro.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's going to be great though, because I have to think that one day we'll be able to find a way to master underwater recordings. And that would be great, because I would love to hear some of those shark screams that we saw in Jaws: The Revenge, when the shark was getting zapped with electricity and was screaming in the movie. I want to hear what they scream like underwater.
Right. I want to talk to the dolphins. I want to hear the whales. And now there's a whole, there's, I think that's thread number 5 we've opened up.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Can I tell you a story?
Tell me
about
a story.
The sound, location sound challenge that I remember. And this was only one that was, identified and solved right on the spot. And that was, we were out in the woods. It was a military film where there were 2 snipers on a hill shooting down into a nuclear power plant, taking out one of the operatives. Wow, all of that is great backstory, but completely unnecessary. So the 2 guys are laying prone behind the scopes, and it's raining. So the shot is gorgeous, and it's just wet, and there's rain drops falling down their faces, and it's real beautiful. But the cinematographer I think we're shooting on a red. They had a big umbrella over the camera, and my gear was pretty well protected. And so I had all my rain gear on the mic, and I was wearing enough gear to keep the mixer under control and relatively dry. Sound devices, 788 is what I use, and that thing is a tank, and it's been in underwater and still, knock on wood here, running great. Anyway, the challenge we had in the picture that I got to be a sound engineer and raise my hand and tell them we're getting unusable audio right now. The rain sounded beautiful as it hit the leaves and the rocks and the guns and the helmets and the gear of the men. It sounded beautiful. But the part of the rain that didn't sound beautiful on the shot was the rain drops hitting the umbrella. Ooh. Going over the camera, because of course we don't see the umbrella on screen,
right?
And there's no way to hide that. Now it sounds beautiful. I love the sound of raindrops on canvas. It's what you fall asleep to camping, and that's a beautiful sound. It has a time and place. This is not it.
Well, yeah, because you're wanting to capture in the audio what the people are going to see on screen, and that a rain hitting an umbrella at any velocity is really thumpy and pitter patter, and that's not at all what it looks like when you're just looking at rain hitting the ground.
Right. And it sounds completely different. It's like one time I heard Foley in the film. It was a student film and I couldn't watch any more of the film from that point forward. But guy walks up to a bar, orders a beer. They pop the top off of the beer. It sounded great. They set the bottle down, and that bottle was 100% empty. And and it was a real solid concrete surface. So the sound of a full bottle versus it's so different. And I couldn't watch the movie. I was completely taken out of the reality. So that same thing is happening there. Like you're hearing raindrops in canvas, but there's no canvas in the shot, and it just doesn't make sense. So anyway, we couldn't get that shot unless we solved it. So I took, and I don't want to play the hero here. You know what? I kind of was a hero in this one, but I was wearing a schmog helmet.
Well, nobody tells a story where they come out like a dork, you know.
That sound engineers often come out as the dork. Well, I was, you know what a schmog is? It's like a fancy name for a scarf, a large scarf that all the military guys were wearing, and we were all wearing similar gear just because of the environment we're in. It was just handy to keep dust off of our face, sun off of our neck. And what I learned to use it was I pulled the scarf off. It's about 3 feet by 3 feet, real thin material, but it was just enough material to drop over the umbrella and cover, basically now expose a layer of cotton to the sky and not a layer of canvas to the sky. And the raindrop sound disappeared completely. And it was like just the day that I will never forget of, being able to go off and save the shot and get what we needed. It was a good day.
That's awesome. So, but that's the real trick, right? Because when you're on a location and there's so many people's time is being taken, sometimes it's a lot of people's money is being used up. There's schedules that you may not be able to come back to a location again. You really have to improvise and you have to be creative on the fly to be able to solve issues. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges of filming really from any role.
It really is. You're right. Any single role, those little things are happening in every department, you know. So sure, we can have the pomp and circumstance and celebrate that one because I experienced it. But those things are happening. Those things are definitely happening in the G&E department all the time. So that's why we do this, right? That's why we love this job.
Yeah, and you're like, and I just employed 3 guys to hold this cloth over my head, so. You can't do it yourself. But there is, tell me if I'm wrong, but isn't there another challenge with an issue like that? Is that if you were to try and record it, or let's say that you were still getting some noise from the cotton, it's in the wrong place. So in the sound field now, you've got a very close up sound of rain hitting something from where the boom is, and that might not match up to your visual at all.
Exactly. Yeah. And in this particular case, we were lucky because, I mean, it was a long lens. We were really close on those sniper guys. So, I mean, the camera, picture like an 85 millimeter. The camera's about 8 feet away. And the umbrella of the camera there. And I'm up real close because since it's an 85 mil lens, I'm able to get real close to their mouths. So I'm far enough away from that source that once we covered the ping of that canvas, it wasn't a ping, it wasn't metal, it was more of a pa. Right. Once we covered pa of that canvas and turned it to the cotton little more, they were more like dups now. Right. It was really hard to hear. And then as you know, during your use or your learning of shooting things on a shotgun mic, they're really, really directional microphones. So then my job was, as the location recordist, is to position yourself so that the recording source is as focused on the actor's mouth as possible, with the added angle of pointing the rear of that microphone as far away from the noise as possible. So basically, in that case, I flipped over to the other side and made sure that the mic was pointing so far away from the camera, but at the actors, instead of pointing the mic at actors with the rear of the mic pointing towards the camera where you might pick up a little bit of that noise in the back of the microphone.
Right. And the angle is, I mean, that is so much of your job is just finding that right angle so that you're picking up everything so that, if two people are having a conversation, one's not a lot louder than the other one, and everything's got to stay balanced. But there's another challenge, I think, to it too, is that while you're trying to monitor the sound through the headphones, it's also happening right in front of you. So you're hearing it in the headphones, but you're also hearing it outside of the headphones at the same time.
Yes, sir. That is so that you, man, I love that you're highlighting all of these wonderful challenges where to anyone else, as we're trying to figure this out, they're all you hear is, oh, we're waiting on sound. And while we're trying to figure out these really technical things, and it's like everyone's sat and waited for 3 hours while we lit the scene. They waited for another hour while talent went through makeup. They're done waiting, but I couldn't do any of that until we got talent in, cameras up, and I could see where the frame is, so I could figure out how close I can get. And now I get to do my job, but everyone's done. And they're just waiting for me. So we get 30 seconds where the other departments get an hour. But that 30 seconds feels like an hour because we just waited 4 hours for the whole scene to be set up. It is the plight of a sound engineer.
But you know what? That's happened even on a lot of the theater gigs that I've done when I'm running audio. Is like nobody wants to give time to audio to set it up properly. They'll give time to lighting. They'll give time to wardrobe and makeup. But nobody wants to give the audio any time. And, one gig that I did, I was brought in on emergency, and I had 16 people with mics that were speaking and singing. And then I had a 16-piece orchestra, and I'm walking in blind doing a show I've never seen before. I've never been to any of the rehearsals. And I literally had 2 songs, and then they opened the doors for the show. And
oh my goodness. So you had to work 32 inputs in two songs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, crap.
But as soon as something goes wrong, even the people that, that they hire you, they look at you like, this shouldn't be happening. Why is this horrible sound happening? Like, well, I'm getting a little bit of feedback because I just got here.
Right.
Like, I don't know the blocking.
And there's 32 mics with potential to be in phase with each other. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
But that's what I don't get. But then they'll also say on the backside of it, the audio has to be good, because if it isn't, it'll ruin the show, or it'll ruin the film, or we're going to have to do a lot of ADR to fix bad audio. If you just take a little bit of time to set it up and do it right, you're going to save yourselves hours of agony later.
Right. Right.
But so many people just don't seem to get that. And even after they've learned it on film after film after film, I've worked with directors that have done tons of film, and they still will send me audio that's got, all kinds of pops and clicks in it and things that shouldn't be there and people talking in the background. And I'm like, how do you not know? This is like your 10th or 11th film. How do you not know how important this is?
That is so true. It totally reminds me of another thing. And, to the director's credit, or the producer or the AD's credit, there's a million things going on, and even sound to sound's credit. There's always a lot of things going on. So to judge something by looking at one frame of that situation comes with complete caveats and warnings and whatnot. But anyway, the same thing. Like I was working with a producer director who had tons of experience, many, many, many things. And we did a take. We're out in the woods. And it's a older piece. I think it was early 1900s. But an airplane went over during a take, and that's of all the 101 sound recording 101 things, like, you got to redo it because an airplane went over. So I just politely, with my little mouse voice, I don't want to obviously never interrupt the take. I always wait until after a take, because even if some part of the sound is bad, we may get the perfect little snip of a certain piece of a line that we're trying to get. So I never interrupt the take. But after the take, I before we moved on, I said to the director, we had a pretty heavy airplane noise through relatively 80% of that take. Just letting you know, but I suggest we redo it. But the retort was, oh, there were airplanes back then. It's okay. But I don't want to fight with you right now. But that's not why I brought it up. Like, I know an airplane sound would be delightful in the scene and probably add to it, but good luck cutting that up.
Yeah.
You had it.
Yeah.
Because it was really long, and it was 2 people, in the conversation, and the airplane wasn't over all of it. And even if it were, certainly isn't the same frequency throughout.
Yeah, exactly. And unless you can time the next take to where the airplane is exactly where it was, the next one that's flying over, it's not going to work. And I think there's a certain level of impatience or excitement, or we have to stick to the schedule no matter what. And if you're shooting that tight, and you better have some really good strategies of how you're going to deal with that in post, because to take a couple of minutes to do an extra take over doing, bringing the actors in to do ADR in the studio, whereas they might not be available. They might be off on another film or, out of the country shooting. And how are you going to get that?
Right. And there's so much more money to do it in post and to ADR it than.
Oh yeah. That's why I'm always so nervous to talk to editors when the film is shot and the film goes to the editor, and the editor's worked on it for a little while, and they're getting ready to send me a rough cut. I'm so nervous to talk to the editor the first time because I'm afraid of what he's found in the audio. And I know that I don't want to know, but at the same point, I have to know. I have to know what I'm dealing with.
Right. Right.
But you could tell just by how hateful they sound, because if it's really bad, they're just like, they don't want to talk about it. They don't even want to admit that they've been a part of the project. And I can't blame them.
Yeah.
But now, of course, we live in a world where you can take an airplane out, and it's really amazing the kind of things we do now, but I would never shoot anything banking on the fact that I would be able to remove that airplane.
Right. Yeah, you're right. And I'm barely scratching the surface on the post-production tools and you can do, but I've seen a post or two of yours or even in late night chats with you. Like, I would walk away from a conversation with you here and there and think, holy crap, how did Scott get rid of X? Right. I thought that was just not possible. This is just not done. But yeah,
and I didn't mind that so much, except that I was still talking when you walked away. So that kind of bothered me.
You're a dork.
But yeah, I mean, for an example, a friend of mine gave me a song that was recorded live in a theater, and the theater was very echoey. And for some reason, this singer kept banging their face on the mic or their head on the mic or something, because I kept hearing all these just like thump sounds that should not have been there. And that's the only thing I could equate it to, is that they kept banging the mic on something, but it didn't sound like a hard surface. It sounded softer. So I think it was like their face or their body or something, which I can't even picture them doing. So she gave it to me and said, if there's anything that you can do with it, let me know. And I said, well, I've got some tools. Let me give it a shot. So I was working with Isotope RX Advanced, which I think was, and I think it's still the same version I have, version 4, which I really need to upgrade. But it took me a little while to find just the right frequencies. But I was actually able to take out every single pop, and you would never know they were there. Like, there wasn't a hole in the reverb. There wasn't just a sudden burst of excess reverb from taking the pop out, but not the corresponding reverb. Like, everything I found just perfectly. And to an extent, that was an element of luck, because I kind of feel like I just fell into a couple of them. But it really is amazing what we can do now. I just did a podcast not too long ago working with Audionamic's new separation tool, where you can separate drums, vocals, and then all other music sources. And
I saw you post about that and thought that was magical to even hear that that's possible.
Yeah, it's called Extract Stems, and it's absolutely amazing to hear what the software can do. And I mean, it's not perfect, but because it's still new technology, and I don't know if they'll ever really be able to perfect that, because there's a lot of crossover in frequencies. Guitar could be a percussive instrument depending on how you pluck it. So it might take some of that and throw it into the drum track versus keeping it in the melodic track. But the fact that we can even do that kind of stuff, but I would never, like I said, I would never shoot a film based on the fact that, oh yeah, I know I could take that plane out in post-production. So we're not going to do a safety shot or anything. That was a good take. So we're just going to go with it. I can't imagine feeling secure enough in digital tools to do that.
Right, especially knowing that you're there. We're there. Let's get it. Let's spend a couple $100 versus the couple thousand, or let's spend a couple thousand instead of a couple 10,000.
Right. Or if it's the other 90% of the movies that you worked on, it's not going to come out anyway. So it really doesn't matter.
That's you make a solid point there. Like, even in that situation where the director or producer or AD or whoever says, "Oh, don't worry about it, that's fine." Like, the rest of the day and or the rest of the shoot now, my mindset is, well, now how close of a filter do I want to put on the things that I'm hearing? Because, for the real meticulous folks in production, like, we could reshoot something for every tiny little bit of thing that goes wrong. But if we're going to skip reshooting a thing because of an airplane, well, I don't even have to worry about whether I'm on axis or not for half of the shot, because it's like reference audio at this point, because we're going to have to reshoot it or re-record it. So yeah, it can not only technically change the vibe of a shoot, but I mean, in morale and all of the personal interactions, and it's a tangled web we weave here. The tangled wave we weave.
It's almost like saying, "Hey, can we retake this because I didn't realize that I had the mic pointing up instead of down," and the director coming back to you and saying, "Well, yeah, we'll just boost the volumes." Like, no, it's a whole different sound.
Yeah, I was at Crafty and I wasn't even here. Should we do that, or are you good with what I didn't record?
Right, yeah. We'll just use that as a backup take in case we need to, match up a visual or something. Yeah, it's so frustrating because you're a guy of quality. Like, if you're going to put your name on something, and I like to think that I'm the same as that, but if you're going to put your name on something, you want it to be the best it can be. And if you know that you've missed something or you could do something better, you want the opportunity to give that best of you. And it's something that's going to stay with you all the time. So if you're not in an environment where you're able to make sure that things are the best they can be, it becomes really hard to maintain that level of integrity when you know that you're surrounded by people that, not necessarily the whole crew, but maybe just the attitude of the people in control of the film aren't setting the same standard.
Right. And then you're working within a mold that's not yourself, and you're not going to produce the work that you can produce because you're just cutting the corners where you're not used to doing that.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine taking it to the level of an actor, say, being on a set that's that way. How do you give performance after performance? If the girl that was giving birth didn't trust the director, how many takes would she have done that would have really had that believability to it?
Dude, you just opened up thread number 5 in this conversation, and I know it didn't come out in any introduction or conversation yet, but I didn't even start in audio. My first roles in film were on stage. I did improv for many, many, many years.
Oh, that's right.
I did music. Yeah, so my beginnings in the film world are all on camera on the other side, but now working in the tech field, having that experience, it gives me a lot of great things to work from in the technical role. So when I'm as a sound engineer working with an actor and miking up the actor, I get to think like and respect their space. If it's an emotional role, I'm not going to be coming off joke for the person who's going into the third emotional scene of the day. Just because we're on a break and I'm working on your mic. Hey, how's it going out there? No.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
All that aside, and speaking back to what you were just saying about playing in the realm of low quality, one of my biggest pet peeves on any set is when we're pushing in for close. We just did our wide shots and the scene was great. We got emotion out of both. It's a 2-person conversation in this scenario. Got great emotion out of both of them, but now we're going to push in for close-ups. And amateur actor A is not going to be on camera. We're going to push in for the close-ups on an 85 millimeter on actor B. And actor A steps out and asks the director, "Do you need me in this shot? Because I'm not on camera, we're going to walk away." So what does that do to your partner, your scene partner? Now they have to, it's the job of an actor to be able to play to their fullest, even if their scene partner's not there.
Right.
But my goodness, be there for the person, because that's the organic, the nuances of two humans interacting that gets caught on camera versus the person saying lines on camera with the other person not there. You can see it a mile 300 miles away. I could.
And there's a certain amount of editing that you can do to bring back to compensate for that. But if the emotion isn't there in the responses, it can be difficult. And now I'm going to tell you an embarrassing story about me on one of the very few times that I was an actor. I was asked by a friend of mine to be in this film, and I played a henchman, which is so out of character for me. It's like the only reason I can call myself an actor is because I'm not a henchman type, like big buff aggressive person. And I have to treat this person very badly. And again, that's not typically me unless I have a reason to. So we were doing take after take after take, and then they were doing a shot from a different angle. So I was in a van, and I was in the passenger seat in the van for the takes that I was in. But then they wanted to shoot a different angle. So I climbed into the back of the van, and I'm just like laying down and I'm listening, and my lines came up and I completely forgot every single word I had to say. I just like drew a complete blank and blew the whole take. And I had done like take after take after take perfectly, like every word perfect. And then this one take where I'm not on screen, I just drew a blank. And I felt so horrible because, I mean, I know it's not like we're rolling tape and I just wasted like 65 feet of analog tape, but it's time, it's people's patience. We're in the van. It's in the summertime. It's hot. So many elements going on. And you really do have a big responsibility to everyone that you work with when it comes to things like that.
That's very true. And you highlighted a fantastic point in like when you're out of the context of that conversation and that dialogue, they just become words. And now they're really easy to forget as you lay prone in the backseat, thankful for this finally getting a break on probably what was a long day. And they always are, so your mind is nowhere but these words. But when you're in the eye to eye moment and having that conversation, you have this layer of energy that you continually draw on the second, third, fourth, and fifth wind to get through it. So yeah, you highlight a pretty fascinating thing there.
Well, thank you.
Oh, I love this stuff.
Fortunately, I didn't get fired. Although while my mind was blank, the only thoughts I did have was, I just lost my job on this film. I mean, no, I hadn't, because they had already shot the majority of my stuff. This was just a pickup shot from, one of the other characters. But I mean, I really felt so responsible because I don't like anybody having to wait on me for anything. And even though there's times where it's completely reasonable, I don't know. I just felt really responsible. And then of course I'm like, oh, the editor's just going to laugh when he hears this. And but the editor was the director, so he was
nice.
But yeah, no, that's good. I really appreciate the depth of what a sound recordist does. And every little thing. I mean, if you angle that mic slightly wrong, it changes the sound. It gives the audience a completely different perception of where they are as a viewer watching those two people talk at a table. If you lean the mic more towards the left than the right, and they feel like they're in the center, but in the audio, they're hearing more of the person on the left, and they're not talking louder. They feel like they're closer to them, and the audio doesn't match the visual, which can completely bring them out of the enjoyment of the film.
It's very, very true. And that's almost an ideal situation, because in most cases, not only are you changing the position in the stereo field where that person's voice is by moving the mic around, but you're also in a shotgun mic or a condenser type hypercardioid that you're going to be using in that close quarters. You could probably just edit that part out. Let me start over. This is the first time I've started something over, and I love this. You know why? Because I just heard a comment and it totally pulled me out of this conversation. So wait, maybe you clap or something and put a spike in the audio wave to cut that out. But anyway, what I was going to say is that's almost an ideal situation, just having to deal with the person's voice in a different stereo field, because with a sensitive directional microphone, you're also picking up whatever the background is where you're pointing that mic. So if it's two people at a table, there might be a refrigerator running on one side, but a refrigerator running on the other. So if you're playing tennis, going back and forth, catching their voices, you're gonna find that you have a wildly different room tone under the voice in one situation versus the other. So a lot of times I've seen rookie sound engineers following the dialogue with the microphone, and it depends. Every situation is different, and you might be able to get away with that. But I try to avoid it. I try to find home and stay home during a take, so that we're not varying that background noise behind the dialogue, which is just as complicated to edit later as the dialogue will be.
Well, that and the fact that if you are playing that tennis match where you're just turning the mic, okay, person on the left is talking, now person on the right is talking, and you're angling it to catch all of the conversation, somebody's going to say their line a little too fast and you're going to miss it, and it's going to make the audio seem really weird. Or somebody is going to jump the next line because the other person didn't respond fast enough, and they're going to start their next line, and now you've got the mic pointed at the other person. Like it's a real risky game to try and do that. I've tried it, and that's why I can say that, because I tried it and I realized what a just a fool's errand it was to try and get anything clean that way.
Yeah, it's tough. So great, you learned some empirical data there very well.
I did, and I learned that I'm not cut out for that kind of work.
Well, you know what? It took me 7 years, but I've learned the same thing.
Well, there you go. Yeah, and but it's definitely an interesting job, and it's something that comes with an incredible amount of responsibility to the film, and it's something that you really at least need to understand how to be creative on the fly and really combat issues like you said about the rain and the wind and things like that, or just the hum of a refrigerator. If you can't pull the plug on the refrigerator, because I've had that too, where I've been on locations and there's certain things we can't move, we can't get to the power. So, and we don't know what breaker it's on. So we're just stuck with, okay, well, we're going to try and shoot around it. But if you can't turn off the refrigerator, that motor's still going to run and you're going to get it in sound.
Right. And that's a killer, especially, it's not as bad, especially with the earlier in the program, you talked about so many tools that we have available now at our disposal to remove noises, especially consistent ones like an air conditioner or a refrigerator. But the trouble is if it's on and off during a take, now you've got the wildly inconsistent sound of the nice quiet room that you wish you had the whole time, and those wonderful lines that you need but have the refrigerator behind it. That reminds me of a story, if I may share yet another. So this is fun. When you do turn off a refrigerator, one of the biggest and most forgotten items on a set is turning the refrigerator back on.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It is, because there's a billion things going on. You're usually through a bunch of hours. You're happy to be moving on to the next location. If you're lucky, it's the end of the day and it's the last location. Wrapping out all your gear. The last thing we remember almost all the time is the fridge, but a key to remembering that, pun not intended, but now intended, is to put your keys in the refrigerator so that you can't leave until you go back to the refrigerator to get your keys to leave. Well, that's not even the story. The fun story is with a new sound engineer that did that very thing, turned the refrigerator off, grabbed a set of keys, put it in the fridge so that, before he got in his car, he realized he couldn't get home without the keys. Well, there's a minor detail in this trick, and that is they have to be car keys that go into the refrigerator, not your house keys.
Oh, man, I know where this is going.
Because putting the house keys into the refrigerator still allows you to leave the set, and that's exactly what happened. The guy couldn't get into his house because it was a separate set of keys.
Oh, man. Oh, that hurts.
And that does hurt, because you just, who knows? I'm sure it was an hour drive because Murphy's Law mandates that such things have to happen if they're already happening like that. And put in 13 hours, portal, and then another 45 minutes home to realize you locked all your windows and can't sneak into your own house and have to drive an hour back to wake up the homeowner and get the key.
Yeah, and it's locked and there's no one home and.
Yeah, that's just messy.
Man.
Just so there's that story.
But and the worst part of it is that you were doing the right thing. Like you were being intelligent. You were being respectful. You're like, I'm going to do this so that I make sure I take care of this person and turn the refrigerator back on. And you were doing it right. You just did it the wrong way.
Right. And in full and selfish disclosure, this was a story, secondhand story that was told to me. This was not me. I'm telling it for a friend. I didn't. I was the one who put the house keys in the refrigerator, thankfully.
Oh, okay.
I just do. But I do it even worse. Like I say I'm good enough. I don't need to put the keys in the fridge. And I have been known to leave a set and forget to turn the refrigerator on. And I remember this one. I can't remember what the shoot was, but it was an older woman and she couldn't figure out her fridge. And I said, "Oh, I know. If I know one thing as a sound engineer, it's refrigerators." And I told her, "Trust me, I can turn your fridge off with no problem." And I turned it off perfectly. And she's like, "I didn't even know where that switch was." And so Anyway, I forgot to turn it back on, and I had to look up and remember how the heck to turn it back, to teach her how to turn it on over the phone, because the poor woman, I forgot that I didn't do the key trick, and
right.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, she just wasted her month of Omaha steak order.
That's what really hurt me there, and I like honestly and legitimately was sad. Like, she didn't realize until whenever it was, and possibly lost food, and that made me sick.
But and those things are certainly unfortunate. The challenge is that you've got so many things going on, and you're under time pressures, and then by the time that the day's over, you're just done, and you just want to get home. But I like the idea of the keys for sure. Yeah. I would just wonder, why did they have their house keys on one ring and their car keys on another ring that were completely isolated from each other, that allowed them to do that?
That's what's fascinating. And even worse, maybe they had it like on a carrier where they just took the house keys thinking that they wanted to have their car keys accessible, not realizing that, it's just so many questions. See, and this is what I get, like, because I spend so much time alone, my brain just kind of wanders into those territories of why. It's not even just what the thing is, it's why did that thing become that way? And then I want to know everything about that, and then how that happened, and how those things happened that made the other thing happen. And it's a good thing. Right,
I have
exactly how many
to occupy my time.
to occupy your time.
All right. Now tell me, in all honesty, how do you not just want to hang out with this guy all the time? I mean, just sit down, have a beer, talk, whatever, go on a field recording. How do you not want to hang out with this guy? He's just awesome, great ball of energy, really, really amazing soul. And keep an eye out for part 2 of the interview, where we go into his new facet of life, which I'm very excited about. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. Please remember to like, share, leave a rating, a review, whatever you like, to help me get the word out, and join the HaskinCast Podcast Facebook group. Link is in the show notes for a monthly drawing. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.